Sure.
Thank you. And so let's see, first we go with calling the meeting to order, I believe. So I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Natural Resources Committee for Caddo Parish Commission. What comes next, Michelle?
The roll call.
Okay, so let's do roll call.
Young,
Present.
Epperson. He's on here.
He's
Lazarus,
Present.
Here.
Jackson, Chavez. Chavez is joining now.
Great.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Super. Thank you, Michelle.
You're
So next comes the invocation, and I've asked Commissioner Epperson to lead us in the invocation today. Everyone, please listen to him.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to all. I will read Proverbs 1 through 5 as a devotional reading for our invocation. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, to give subtly to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. I've read to you Proverbs 1st chapter, 1st through the 5th verse. May God have a blessing to the readers, the hearers, and the doers of his word.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Epperson. And now, Commissioner Lazarus, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I'm not sure if we're going to have a picture of a flag or not.
No, I don't have a picture of one.
I don't think Crystal's here to give us a picture of the flag. So let's just all envision the American flag in our hearts as we say
Here
the
we go.
pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner Lazarus.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any agenda additions, Michelle?
No, sir, I don't have any.
Okay. I don't know if this is the right time to point it out, but Dr. Wilson told us that we were going to have two guests who were going to come and speak to us. So they're talking about things that are on the agenda, though, so I don't think that they're really additions. Do we have any public comments?
I didn't receive any.
Okay, great. So now we have new business. We need to do our certificate for teleconference. This is the standard one that we do for every meeting. Is that right, Michelle?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do we need to vote on that?
No, sir. It's just, it has to be attached to the agenda.
Okay, great. So that's in order then. And we can go on to the discussion of the dredging of the Red River. So just as a little bit of background, the reason I put these three agenda items on the agenda today is because I think that they're all related. They're all in the natural resources area, and they all respond to the request that President Chavez made of me, which was to put together a 50-year water plan for Caddo Parish through this committee, and then get advice from all the commissioners to figure out how we should start to implement that. So a little bit of preliminary research on my part shows that our neighbors in Texas are putting together ambitious 50-year water plans for their cities and communities. They're expecting their population to grow a lot, maybe by 20 to 30 million people in the central and eastern Texas region, including Dallas. There are not a lot of water supplies in Texas compared to states that are east of Texas, and we are the westernmost one of them. So I think that we are probably in a really good position to use some of our extra water resources as supply for places that are drier and needier and would purchase them, and that includes Texas. I've been reading about pipelines that are being constructed Hayes County, which is on the same aquifer system that we're on. It's on the Carrizo-Wilcox aquifer, which comes up the coast sort of. And those supplies only last a certain amount of time, but we have a lot of surface water here that can be processed and transported and hopefully brought to market one day in a burgeoning water market, starting in Texas and maybe stretching all the way to California. So dredging the Red River is one part of that. I don't know if our guest is here right now to talk about it yet. Is he here, Dr. Wilson?
I'm not sure. Is Ken Rogers, are you online yet?
I'm online.
Okay, great. Well, so Mr. Rogers, would you like to tell us a little bit about the current status of plans to dredge the Red River?
No, sir. Ken Rogers will be here, sir, to talk about the watershed initiative.
I was just talking about the watershed initiative.
Yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Richard Bontali will be joining us, but he'll be joining us at 1:30 because
He's coming later.
Another meeting.
Okay.
But before we go with Ken Rogers, let me make a couple of comments relative to the water. New commissioners back in 2005, we had a citizen named Kenneth Myers, Ed from Keithville, had approached the commission about his concern about water. And at that point, we created a water committee, which consisted of all the local governing bodies to include Bossier Parish. And we invested about $650,000 to do a water study analysis for us to see what it would take to get enough water supply for the next 100 years. And so that we do have that report available, and we had some initiative to roll out a plan. We had ambitious objectives to build 2 plants, one at the port and one in north of 220. That didn't materialize for obvious reasons, because we needed a larger population to join the efforts, which was the city of Shreveport, but they had refused because they own the water system. And so what we did, we encouraged Blanchard to expand their system and probably use a secondary, the Red River. So we are still utilizing all those from the engineering study. So we don't have to recreate the wheel. We just need to give all the new commissioners an update on our most recent efforts to look at trying to get a reliable water source for the next 100 years from the Solar Parish all the way up to Arkansas. And by the way, Bossier Parish was going to be a part of this too, because we had envisioned putting a pipe under the Red River to supply North and South Bossier Parish and what they need. But it got stopped in the track because the city of Shreveport didn't want to be a part of it. And we could not make it affordable enough for the rural areas of the parish to invest in the type of infrastructure that will be needed to pull us off. So we have a very comprehensive study of the Red River. In 2005, we got federal appropriations through David Vitter at the time when he was a state senator. He gave us appropriation to the Corps of Engineers, and that was slow in coming. So the parish commission decided, working with Bossier Parish, to fund a $650,000 project. So we just need to bring everybody up to speed and not reinvent the wheel.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. I would love to get copies of that report to all the committee members, especially the new one.
Yes, sir. We will get Mr. Ken Ward has been our project manager for that project, and at the time we can get him to give everybody an update on where we are with the project and what has happened in the most recent years and months.
Okay, terrific. Does anybody else have a comment that they want to make about dredging the Red River before we skip along to hear Mr. Rogers about the watershed initiative? Yeah,
your comments, Commissioner, will come on the Red River when Mr. Richard Bontali joins us on the call in the next 20 minutes or so.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, Michelle.
May I interrupt and ask whose number is 318-212-0221 so I can name them?
That's Patrick Wesley, Parks and Recreation. Thank you.
And who is 347-2019?
Kim Weaver.
Okay, thank you.
Super. Thanks very much. Commissioner Johnson, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say, related to the dredging of the Red River, if that's the subject we on. That's the subject.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be fine. We'll all absorb what Mr. Rogers, the Red River expert says when he comes on, and we can talk about our views on it while he's not here. So please go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I can wait till he comes and do it then, but I didn't know how you were trying to do the agenda.
Well, so maybe it would be better to wait since he's going to come in 20 minutes, and we can start hearing about the watershed initiative. So thank you again for inviting Kent Rogers to come and talk to us. I'm sure you know about it, Dr. Wilson, but there's a deadline for the River and Rain Gauge Network feedback at the Louisiana Watershed Initiative. I got an email about it a couple days ago, and that's April 30th. I think they're looking for a report about our rain and river levels. I'm sure someone's already on top of it. I just wanted to mention it in case.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Kent Rogers.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here.
Commissioner Young, can we go ahead and proceed with the item?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Ken. Would you give us an update on where we are with the project?
Okay. First off, I did forward you, Woody. I just forwarded a document to you, and if you could, when you get a chance, share that with everyone. Kind of gives an update on the project as a whole. Within Region 1 is the area that we cover for the Louisiana Watershed Initiative. That covers Caddo, Bossier, Webster, Claiborne, Bienville, Red River, DeSoto, Natchitoches, Sabine, Wynn, and Grant parishes, and Rapides Parish, excuse me. And yes, you're correct. They're looking for some information on the rain gauge initiative. And the sooner we can get some comments back to the state on that, the better. There is some deadlines. Some of those deadlines I think are going to be pushed. We've already had one deadline pushed for our next regional meeting, primarily due to the COVID stuff. We had our initial meeting was held on March 10th with a representative from each one of the parishes there. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for June 9th. At that point, we'll be doing selecting some officers and working on the bylaws for the Regional Watershed Initiative. A couple of key deadlines for the project inventory is 10/31/2020 to get an inventory of all projects, known projects that are out there at this time that cover the region. There was an initial round of projects submitted. From that initial round, there were 8 projects from our region that were selected as eligible under the state's program. Now, there were some other projects that were submitted. Once they go through the ones that the state said are eligible, they'll forward both that listing that did not get funded through the state's program and all the others to the regional coordinators, and we can go through. We'll have a little bit of money. I believe it's $5 million at that point that we can select some projects to move forward from there. There'll be some later rounds of funding. We don't know exactly how much and when at this point in time. There'll be 2 more large rounds of funding to come down the pike. And we'll be doing some outreach. Some of these things that y'all have for your Red River dredging project and what you were speaking of before in terms of a more comprehensive look at water for your area could help play into this process down the line. One thing I would like to add, I know it's not necessarily watershed oriented, but more of the Red River dredging oriented, is that I know there's a compact, a multi-state compact out there between Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and I believe Oklahoma is part of that compact. Y'all should reach out to Rocky Rocket with the Greater Bossier Economic Development Foundation. He's been working with that compact, and there's some issues that most of the states have with Texas in terms of that compact. Texas, exactly like Dr. Wilson mentioned, Texas is looking at water everywhere, and they've been trying to suck water out of the Red River and anywhere and everywhere that they can get a hold of. And we need to do whatever we can to stop that effort, because they'll suck us all dry if they have their way. And it's mainly the Dallas-Fort Worth area reaching out for water. They're dry. Back to the watershed initiative. You are correct. The feedback for the rain gauge has been extended to April 30th. My understanding is they're going to extend that again. But if we can get some feedback from that as quickly as possible. I believe Heidi from my office and someone from Bump's office had sent some things around for that. There is a link in the document I sent you that will lead you to that network program. I'm gonna pause for a minute. Any questions or anything?
Thank you very much. I had a question for Tim Weaver. Tim, do you happen to have information already collected about our rain gauge and river levels that we could get ready pretty quickly to send to the Watershed Initiative?
Now, a lot of what they're looking for, a lot of what they're looking for is potential gaps and areas where we may need to put some more gauges and readers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Commissioner Young, I don't think Tim's online. Mr. Ken Ward.
Yeah, I don't think he's here anymore.
Ken Ward is online, and he is our project. Ken Rod.
Oh, okay.
And Robert Glass is online too. Either one can respond to your question if you like.
Great. Well, it seems like my question should be changed, but so just can we start getting together all the data that's being requested from the Watershed Initiative to send to them pretty soon?
Yeah, I think it'd be appropriate to let Robert Glass is on the technical committee of the NL call, and he should be able to handle that task for us.
Super.
We've already got readings on Red River, Wallace Lake, most all the local lakes and stuff we already have, and I think that's available to the initiative if they want it, but the Weather Service, we've already got those in play.
Good.
Yeah, we have access to all that. I think what they're looking for is do you know of some other areas you'd like some put in?
Like where?
Yeah, where would you prefer some additional, are there locations we need to put some additional rain gauges and meters and whatnot?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I think they got them on every lake and river in the area.
Yeah, and I think most of the bayous in the area are also covered, the major bayous. I know there's one out here on
not one on 12 Mile.
Pierre right near, yeah, there's one on Bayou Pierre right near 12 Oaks and Acadiana. I know that. So I know there's some out there.
Yes, there are.
Okay. Well, so maybe we should spend just like a little bit of time looking through our map and see if there's a place or two where we would ideally have a rain gauge that we don't, and if we don't, we can just tell the state that we have plenty of water gauges already.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, does anybody else have any comments about the watershed initiative they want to make now, or questions? Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Commissioner. Kent, you'd mentioned Texas is doing everything they can to try to increase their water, utilizing the Red River or Caddo Lake. Is that something that we, the Parish Commission of Caddo, we need to take a look at, or is that something that we need to send a resolution to the state legislators to block that?
I would recommend Rich can probably give you more detail on that when he comes online.
Yeah, he's on.
But I would recommend working through him, and then Rocky Rocket in the Bossier Economic Development Foundation. I know he knows who the folks are that are the specific appointees to that compact.
Mhm.
I know it's been something that's been raised every time we go to DC. That's something that they raise is a huge issue of Texas, just trying to steal water from everybody, basically. So yeah, I think somewhere down the line, the more resolutions we can get from local bodies, encouraging, our use of that water versus their use of that water is better.
Hey, Commissioner Young, I'd like to comment on that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think we're on top of this issue already because we are part of the compact agreement. No one can get water from the Caddo Lake without first talking to us. And then also we have a moratorium in place on the Sabine River. Also that we have put a halt to any water being taken out of that other than what's currently allowed. So we'll be at the table in any future decisions when some approachment will be made toward getting our water source. So we are on top of that already. And like I said, my watchdog's on the line, Mr. Ken Ward, he's on top of that. So we don't have an issue there.
Great. Great. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. I'll just throw in my opinion a little bit about the issue of Dallas stealing water. Obviously, I don't want Dallas to steal our water, but I would be happy for them to buy some of it. So that's sort of what I'm thinking about for the long term. Hopefully, maybe we could sell some of our extra water.
Okay. Okay. And also, Mr. Richard Bontali is with us too, Commissioner Young. If you want to go back to that.
Yes, I see Mr. Bontali now. Before I ask him to talk, I think Commissioner Johnson say something, Commissioner Johnson.
After he gets through.
You did have something to say? No.
I said I'll wait till after he gets through.
Okay, great. Okay, well, in that case, I'd like to ask Mr. Brontoli to please tell us the state of the Red River dredging project and anything else germane that he would like to communicate.
Okay, I will comment first. Let me on the Red River Compact. I go to their meetings every year. They and it's just so you know, the local representative is John Michael Moore from Bossier City. He is the rep, and so is the director of LADOTD, but they usually send somebody. But those are the two representatives from Louisiana on the compact. Their whole mission is to ensure a certain amount of water passes each state boundary. And for instance, a number of years ago up in the Panhandle, Oklahoma, Texas did try to put a dam on one of the freshwater rivers, and they prevented them because they weren't allowing the allowable amount to pass into Oklahoma. So that is the compact's mission, is to ensure so much water passes state boundaries. Now dredging, I don't know if y'all had a discussion before I came on, but there's two things about dredging that you hear about. One is dredging for navigation. That is what the Corps of Engineers does for the navigation channel, 9 foot, 200 foot wide, to ensure all the way to Shreveport, the Caddo Bossier Port, it's navigable and doesn't get less than 9 foot for dredging. So that's one dredging. That's navigation dredging. Any dredging, if you're thinking dredging to prevent flooding, we created the Flood Technical Committee after the 2015 flood because of the higher river stages with lower flows. And the Corps, our delegation got them $1.5 million to do some investigating and modeling. And they have completed a sedimentation surveys and hydraulic surveys all of the Red River on Louisiana. And last fall, we saw some modeling that they were working on. It's supposed to be completed within the next month or so and come to us and make the final presentation to the Flood Technical Committee. And then we would do public meetings. Now, the modeling, what the modeling will do is we'll do what ifs. What if we dredge so much silt? How much would that impact flooding? 6 inches a foot if you do X amount of dredging, and it would cost this amount to do it. And the river's such high silt, every time we have a high water like now, how much would silt back in and would you have to redredge? And how much would that cost? So the modeling will be a great tool for us to work with the leadership of the communities to determine what we can do and what we should do. And the modeling is going to show to everybody a combination of siltation in the river between the levees and urbanization. So it's going to show that how much impact those have had on the river levels. I think everybody, you all know the technical committee consists of the engineers of Caddo and Bossier parishes, the 2 cities, the 2 levee districts, the Waterway Commission, the port, and I'm the chair, being sort of an overall unbiased organization umbrella over everybody. So we've been having meetings, and we hope to have this last update and final report and model within another month or so. Is that what you were looking? Those are the issues you were looking at?
Yes, I think so. Let me go ahead and ask Commissioner Johnson if he wants to say his comment or question.
Well, I guess I wanted to kind of find out where were we at on all that, because when we lobbied our congressman about it, it was basically that we had the Corps of Engineers had to do a study first, and I guess that's what you just got you talking about, some of the results of the study. One of the major problems that we have the silting is because of the first lock and dam that's south of Caddo Parish. And as long as you have that dam in place and you don't have a dam north of Caddo Parish, you're going to be continuing to do this time and time again. It's just a matter of time that once you dredge, it's going to slip right back up again. So in order to fix it, to me, it seems that you would have to put another locking dam north of Caddo Parish to keep that level between that point and the first locking dam at a level in which you could control. Now, what does that do? That just causes flooding north of that dam that you put in place. And that will then flood the north part of Caddo Parish up in that area. Most of it is farmland, but it would be, you could actually use that land for a different type of crop than what you have going on now. Doing it the other way, not there, you dredge, it's good for a while, and it's just gonna sit right back up again. So you'll be spending that same money over and over and over again until you fix the problem. And the problem is, when you look at the red, it's flowing real good until you get to that first locking down, and then it starts to back up. And that's the part that has to be fixed. How do we make our area navigable, make the river use year round? And the only real way to do that is to put in another locking dam north of Caddo Parish.
Well, we just got approval. The Arkansas put up $1 million and they were looking at the benefits prove that it is feasible to do lock and dams north into Arkansas. The Corps agreed to complete the feasibility study. So we're looking now to get the funding to do the full feasibility study for more lock and dams north. And part of the structures below us do not have flood control value, but we would build those in any future lock and dams above us. One thing about the silt, it's not so much the lock and dam. Between the lock and dam and Shreveport are a lot of dikes, that stick out into the river, and those dikes silt behind them. So it's really the siltation behind the dikes. And the reason for the dikes is to maintain the channel to self-scour so you don't have to dredge the channel. So we do know that it's the siltation behind the dikes, the trees that grow up. Like if you look at Hamels Park or by Jimmy Davis Bridge, all that area was silted in, and then the trees, well, that takes away from flood storage. But like I mentioned, there's also urbanization. We've come in, and to be honest, Clyde Fant is not the levee. The levee is actually a mile west, and we don't want the water to come past Clyde Fant. A lot of effort's been done to stop it. So if the water doesn't spread out, it's got to go up. So that's what their models will show, is how much impact is siltation and urbanization, and what can we do to reduce the risk, future risk. But you're right. There's no doubt if you keep dredging, all you're going to do is keep dredging every year because it silts right back in. So there's a lot of impacts, or a lot of items that go into why the river is acting.
Thank you, Mr. Brontelli. I have a question about a dredging option that I haven't heard many people talk about, which is like a silt pump, or a like brackish water, like muddy water pump that can be installed in the river to sort of continuously pump sediment and water out. Has anybody considered using those, or maybe a system of those, to maintain lower levels of silt once the dredging is done, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, there's two types of dredging. One is in river and the other is upland. So if you want to take the silt out of the river and not let it stay in there, you've got to now find a lot of land to put it on.
Sure.
You have to get environmental approval, and whose land you're going to take, and with the amount of silt we're talking about every year, that's a lot. You need a lot of land, or it would build up pretty quickly. So
right.
There are issues. Yes, we would look at that. We would definitely look at, but then again, you get into the cost benefit analysis that we would do. Is, are you willing to put up this much cost for, so much reduced flooding? But
Right.
all that'll come out, and we'll have public meetings where all these ideas could be tested or evaluated.
Great. Thank you. My one of the thoughts that I had about this method of silt removal was that the land that Commissioner Johnson was just mentioning, the farmland in the north part of Caddo Parish, if you look at it, it's been farmed conventionally for a long time. A lot of it's just sort of red clay. It looks very depleted. And something that is commonly known about river silt is that it's very fertile. And so if you, I can imagine like sort of a symbiotic use of that silt in some places which are already low-lying, maybe improving crop value up there. Might help convince some people to let their land be used for that.
Yep, we can investigate all that. We've even looked at, like to save Baton Rouge or New Orleans, they have the Morganza byway where you divert the thing. Well, the problem up north in Caddo Parish, any diversion comes into 12 Mile Bayou and right back into the river.
Right.
In Shreveport, on the Bossier side, you're compounding Barksdale Air Force Base and others. So any sort of a diversion, we looked at that. Caddo and Bossier parishes really doesn't look good. But again, we'll evaluate all those sort of options.
Mr. Chairman,
Great. Yes, Mr. Epperson,
I have a question, please.
please speak.
How many times has the red been dredged since it has become navigable in the areas in
Mr.
which we're
Bartoli,
speaking
do you
of?
know that?
I didn't hear that.
Mr. Brontoli, do you know how many times the Red River has been dredged since it was made navigable?
Well,
Yes, since the
the
law.
channel, the 200-foot wide, 9-foot deep channel is dredged every year because like right now with the high water, when it goes down, it'll silt in. It'll silt in near the lock and dam. So the Corps already has a dredge on contract, and when the river gets low enough. But strictly, the only dredging that's been done is the channel from Shreveport, Caddo Port south, and it's 200-foot wide, 10, 11-foot deep. That's it. No other dredging's been done.
Okay,
and
that answers
so-
my question. Thank you.
Mr. Brontoli, and are you claiming that navigability dredging isn't helping for flooding noticeably?
No, because we're doing in-stream dredging. So what they take out, they put to the side,
They leave it in the river.
or it keeps going south.
Okay.
But
Okay.
no, it really does not impact any level of flooding.
Great. Well, does anybody else have a question or a comment about the dredging projects of the Red River? Okay. Well, so just to conclude this discussion, I would really like to see the report. I would like for us all to get access to it when it's finalized and available. Mr. Brontoli and Dr. Wilson, maybe you will have access to it and can disseminate it to all of the interested commissioners. That would be great. And we can talk about it once we know its details in our next meeting. And then, yes?
Can I make a comment real quick?
Please.
This is Kent Rogers. There is a bigger, broader model being developed for the entire watershed area that will help address some of this, that if you do these things to the river, what does it do to the rest of the watershed for the area? If you do these other projects within the whole watershed area, what does it do to the river and whatnot? So there is a bigger model being developed. Atkins, I think it's Atkins Engineering out of Baton Rouge is the lead for that model development. It's being done through DOTD, but as part of the watershed initiative.
Thank you very much, Kent. That's good to know.
Welcome.
Do you have any idea when that report will be available? Does it have a timeline?
They just started on that work. I believe they have roughly a year to complete the model.
Okay, great.
Hey, Commissioner Young.
Yes, Dr. Wilson.
Yeah, I had a question for Kent Rogers. Kent, a couple of years ago, Commissioner Johnson was concerned about flooding in the MLK area and around Ford Street, perhaps by J.S. Clark. Will your initiative take into account flooding in those areas as well?
Yeah, we can look at different projects. That's part of what the whole watershed initiative is to look at some of those smaller projects like that and what will it do for the whole area. I'm not sure whether that project was submitted under first round stuff or not. We can definitely get something put in, to the future rounds to look at that.
Yeah. Commissioner Johnson, does that address your issue, sir, that you brought up a couple of years ago?
Well, I mean, it should be a part of it because the way that the Red, 12 Mile Bayou, McCain Creek, and Bushy Bayou all tie in together. And then whenever Cross Lake overflows, it goes into Bushy Bayou, which then goes into 12 Mile Bayou, which then goes into the Red River. Well, Cross
Correct.
Bayou and then the Red River. But if the Red is high, then those waters end up backing up or can't get into the system. And so what does it do? It starts to flood. And once it leaves the banks of those bayous, you got flat land, and then it just runs, and we end up flooding the MLK area. We end up flooding along Huey Huckabee. We end up flooding School Park. You start flooding all along Clyde Fant Parkway into the areas in which John Paul has talked about, and I think it's another commissioner that, no, it's John Paul's district too, that floods. And
Correct.
so, you know, that happened in 2015, that happened in 2016. Now, we haven't had the perfect storm yet, because in 15, it was the I-30 flood, and the water was coming down the river, and it started flooding in the Shreveport area. And then in 2016, we had Cross Lake flooding, along with what was going on with the Red River, because it was high. And so that water had a hard time getting out across Lake, which then flooded more of the neighborhoods around the lake and less of Caddo Parish. So if we get into this storm that there's rain along I-30 and rain along I-20, then we're in trouble, because that water will come south. The water that's here, that's falling, that's running off the ground, going into Cross Lake, will have nowhere to go. So you'll have mass flooding across Lake, plus you'll have flooding across all of the neighborhoods along that 12-mile bayou, McCain Creek, Cross Bayou, and all those other neighborhoods I just talked about. And you're talking about a lot just on the Caddo side. On the Bossier side, you also have massive flooding on that side as well. But, you know, that should be a major part, because that's a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of businesses and a lot of city investment that's along the river banks on both sides that will be impacted.
Correct. That's the whole basis for the whole watershed model, is to look at the whole area together, not just the Red River, but what happens to all these other tributaries in the whole system out there. And then look at projects of, you know, what projects are going to have the most benefit for the whole area, the area as a whole, that we can fund through this watershed initiative. But
Okay,
you're correct. That's exactly what this bigger, broader model is to look at, is how we can solve the most of those problems out there.
Right. And the bad part about it is, a lot of times once that water leaves the banks, it fills up pretty fast. And if somebody is sleep overnight, they might wake up and have water in their home if they sleep hard.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogers. So you'll hopefully keep us abreast of the watershed model that Atkins Engineering is doing for our region as it becomes sort of more developed. Would appreciate that.
We will. We will.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other things that they want to say or ask about the watershed initiative? Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to move on to our next discussion item, which relates to the watershed initiative. I think food security and so program that I would like for us to consider investing in as a parish. One of the interesting things about the watershed management strategies that can take place sort of on the smallest level is that they're done on a small scale, so they can be kind of inexpensive. And one of the best ways to do it is to get water to soak into the ground. That doesn't work everywhere if you're in a very low-lying area, of course, but if you're on a hill and you can get some water to soak to the ground and take it out of a storm drain instead, then you have less flash flooding downhill in all your water systems. And so the federal government, through the EPA, is encouraging communities all over to examine and invest in green infrastructure projects, which is what they call ways to change the shape of the ground that forces water to soak in. It creates a huge number of benefits, and one of the benefits is that there's groundwater on site that's easiest to extract with the roots of plants. I think we should plant a lot more plants here to absorb some of that water and turn it into a beneficial use, which is to produce food. We've started a sort of prototype community garden that utilizes this technology, which is just a contour garden or a contour ditch. And it's planted with fruit trees right now, which I think are doing well, I've heard, but I haven't been there to check on them. I know the vegetable garden is still not up and running, but I wanted to talk to, and I think maybe Patrick Wesley is still on the line, and Dr. Wilson, and I wanted to just check and see if we have received any offers for the labor for that, labor and design for that garden, and if we're moving on it at all, because I think it would be a good type of thing to replicate other places as a way of capitalizing on the consequences of our better water management.
Okay. Patrick.
I'm here, Dr. Wilson. I'm here.
Well, you want to go ahead and take a cut at that before I start my comments?
Yes, as you all know, I came on board in the latter part of October, and which was the winter cold season of the community garden season. Since then, Seneca Smith, one of our program coordinators, is no longer with us. She left in February, and we have not had an opportunity to identify anybody yet to take over any of those garden activities. We were concerned about the community garden and the time and the resources it was taking for one individual to maintain a particular garden. So I had reached out personally to Shreveport Green, LSU Ag Center, the Red River Coalition of Community Gardens to see if they could assist us with the community garden activities. To date, we had some bids from Shreveport Green, but Shreveport Green was not interested in one or two gardens. They were interested in us supplementing for the whole garden program, and so we have not moved yet as far as community garden activities. LSU Ag, Red River Coalition, they just don't have the staff bandwidth to assist us with it. So we basically have not had any gardening activities since the first of the year. And, with the pandemic starting, we just haven't had any chance to get any community garden activities established.
Okay, may I ask, so some acquaintances of mine who work on sustainable types of gardens told me that they had contacted you about wanting to do work for that garden. They're not affiliated with those other groups. They're just sort of individuals with a company. Did you get any contact from Tyler Sanders or Brittany Maddox?
Yeah, I was talking to Tyler. I'm still waiting on quotes from Tyler. I have not received anything to date.
Oh, so you haven't received a proposal from them?
No.
Okay.
But I know he's gone out to look at MLK site as well as Greenbrook Park site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Hey, Commissioner Young.
Yes.
And Commissioner Johnson, I know you all have interest in this. Let me say a couple of things relative to gardening. It was our primary objective to do gardening was to provide some educational knowledge to students who are at Southern University. We signed a cooperative endeavor agreement last June with Southern University so that they will be able to provide skill training for the Youth Build program. And what we said in the cooperative endeavor agreement that we would provide some gardening tools, seeds, picnic tables, fertilizer, general beautification, and educational training. The labor was supposed to be done by these kids in the Youth Build program, and they were supposed to gain knowledge by participating in this. But it seemed to me, the focus has shifted to the Caddo Parish Commission maintaining the garden. We don't have the manpower or the funding resources to do it on that level. Because what we did do last year when we were doing this, we had to forego some other things within our programming area within our core programming area that we should not have done. For example, we concentrated more on doing gardening, and we did do some critical things like basketball leagues, baseball, and flag football, because we only have 2 people that actually does recreational coordinating activities. So we had to take manpower away from those activities and put it on gardening, and that should have never happened. So we since corrected that, but we think from the very start, we don't have the manpower or the resources. And the quotes just far that Patrick had provided me, the quotes that from the Shreveport Green, we got 2 different quotes here. One is for 68,000 and one for 79,000. That budget, certainly the Parks and Recreation budget cannot sustain nothing like that, because the Shreveport Green,
Very high proposal.
they didn't want to just do 1 or 2 places. They have 35 sites throughout the parish of Caddo, 10 at schools, and the majority of those are in the city areas. And they said they would like to do the collective, all of it. And that's what the price that they gave us. So I think if we want to go back at this, we need to go back to the original agreement and the corporate dev agreement with Southern University CDC, is that we were supposed to provide knowledge and a limited help, and they were going to provide the bulk of the manpower for the purpose of training young people on how to do this. So
I see.
So my concern is that, we got Parks and Recreation budget is very small, smallest in all parish government, and the fewest amount of people in all parish government. So we cannot do it on a level that was being talked about right now. And certainly we couldn't, it's unsustainable, and we don't have a dedicated funding source to cover that expense. So that would be my concern about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson, looks like you want to say something.
Yes, I do. I think the intent of the community garden is basically what the name of it is, a community garden. So the community will be the one that will basically maintain and pick the vegetables that they do. We just got to engage the community to say, this is what we want to do, and this is what y'all gonna have to do as part of this community garden project.
Mm-hmm.
The only time that you really would have to have somebody from the outside is when you actually are tilling up the ground and replanting for the next season of gardening. So, I mean, if you're going from a 80% green garden to maybe potato, squash, and whatever, then you'll need somebody to come in and help plant all that stuff. But then they will maintain it until that garden has fulfilled its purpose of that particular season, and then you retail it up again, and then bring those people to come back in. Now, I've talked to I guess it's the chancellor or director at Southern University in Baton Rouge, and he would love to have some students come up to do that kind of stuff. LSU Ag Center should be willing to do it as well on a seasonal basis. But I know Southern University, that person told me that he would love to come up here and do some work in this area, because I said you got a branch here. So I mean, y'all should be trying to work with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want it to be that the parish administration thinks that it's 100% their responsibility to do everything at the garden. We have to hand it off in between to the citizens of the community, because it's one of the ways that we're saying, okay, we're trying to help not make this a food desert. So if we got food that's planted, y'all can go in, they can go through that and hold the weeds out every once in a while, and go and pick the vegetables, the fruit from the fruit trees, and keep the grass out. And then in between is where the hard time, the rough part is, because you got to till the ground up and replant. And so that's where they gonna need the help at. The same model is being done in the Moortown area, where it basically the neighborhood plants everything. As a private sector investor, we went in and tilled the ground up for them and we till it every once in a while for them, but they go in and they plant it. And they pick up everything that they plant, and once that's over with, they say when they need to be re-tilled again. And so it works because it's working in the Moortown area, and it's been working in that area for the last 6-7 years or even more. So it's something that's doable. We just got to get the community involved and saying, okay, these are the vegetables that will work this time of the year, and get them planted, get them on board of going by, looking at the vegetable growth, and then harvest them. And then once it's harvested, we also watch, and then we bring that team in to till the ground up, because this is a lot bigger portion of land than it is in the Moortown area, but it will have way more impact on the community because of the location that it's in.
Mhm. Hey, Commissioner Johnson, I certainly agree with you. We haven't had any volunteers to help us take the lead, other than the fact that we have a CEA with an agency that was supposed to be doing all the labor.
Well, I mean, I can get some of the NGOs in the MLK area
Okay.
to assist. That's no problem. It's just that they didn't know.
Okay.
Right.
And also,
Commission-
oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I'm
Patrick.
sorry, Doc.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, we support community garden programming, but it's just more of a staff bandwidth situation for us. And you talked about community engagement, and when I speak with Shreveport Green and the Red River Coalition and LSU Ag, that's their major problem, not able to sustain community engagement on a year-round basis. And so the community gardens end up nice for a couple of months and then become outsourced for the remaining of the calendar year. That's what we're trying not to do. And as far as our maintenance staff, we only have 4 maintenance staff overseeing over 16 assets and properties throughout Caddo Parish. And we can't afford to take 1 or 2 guys out to go till during the spring and the summer because of the grounds that we have to cover. And it just becomes an issue with staff and maintenance when we have to take those guys from our grass cutting crews and our tractors and cleaning our trails and things, and spending half the days and almost a full day tilling gardens. It becomes a bandwidth issue of getting things done. And that's our problem. But we support the community garden initiative, but it's basically a staff bandwidth situation for us.
So, Dr. Wilson, does the community garden have to stay in Parks and Recreation? Can it move into Public Works or another department?
I think, Commissioner, we have to pay strict attention to the fundings that we are getting to do these various functions are prescribed at the ballot box, particularly on how we use those funds. And we may not be at liberty to start changing those parameters if it take away from what the citizens voted for at the ballot box.
Right. I mean, because one of the reasons we got a yes vote on this Parks and Recreation was because of community gardens.
Yes,
and
sir.
so now we're saying that we don't have the resources to do them.
Yeah.
If you look at the commissioners at that time, that basically said, okay, well, we wanted a community garden, and we're going to go out and we're going to make sure that community supports the tax renewal of Parks and Recreation. And now we're saying we don't have the resources to do it.
Yeah.
I'm saying that, there's other ways to do it, because when you look at the inner city communities and you talk about Shreveport Green coming in, LSU Ag Center coming in, Red River, whatever group you said coming in, they don't know them people. So the engagement with them will not be long because they don't know them.
Right.
You have to get the person who is the servant of that area involved, to get the neighborhood association involved, to get some people accountable to be there to help do that. And then they will run with that from that point on. When you start leaving people out, that's when you're going to have an area that's going to grow up and be weeds because nobody's really engaged. When we were going to have the ground opening ceremony, it was like, okay, we didn't know what was going on over there until I started telling people. They didn't know. They just thought it was somebody that had the property and they would just put some stuff out there.
This is Donna Frazier. I wanted to point out that the cooperative endeavor agreement that we had with Southern, can somebody please mute? thanks. That we had with Southern has expired. So as of right now, the parish doesn't have permission to be on that plot of land. Also, I mean, because it's their land according to, well, whose land is it, Commissioner?
That is the parish land. That is parish adjudicated property. We're talking about at the corner of MLK and LaGuardia. We're not talking about down at right there by Southern.
Okay, now, and who did we have permission? Okay, so that is parish adjudicated property.
Yes.
Okay, well then that's different from the agreement that we had with Southern. So
The other agreement you're talking about is the agreement that's on MLK right by David Raines. That's the one you're talking about.
okay,
But what we're talking about is down by LaGuardia and MLK. Two different pieces of property.
okay, so the property you're discussing is parish owned.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson, the issue we have, and I want to echo what Patrick said, we support gardening programs to the extent that we can support it with available resources. And we thought that would be education and not getting out there and actually being physically responsible for doing all the tilling and cultivating and planting and everything else to go with that, which is a full-time job in itself. But we envision training people on gardening procedures so they can go out and do them things for themselves. Because when I reached out to Stony Hill Community Garden Association, well, I met one person and she said, Dr. Wilson, the issue we have is I can't get enough people in Stony Hill to help maintain the garden in Stony Hill. And I said, well, if you don't have the manpower, I certainly don't have it, but we have knowledge, but we don't have the manpower commitment to go with the process. We are for gardening, but we have limited manpower to be able to implement it on a scale we had it previously, on a scale that it need to be on. Commissioner Johnson looking at me like,
Well, I guess it's hard for me. Okay, so when we had the young lady doing it,
yeah.
she was doing it by herself.
No, sir, she wasn't.
So she was pulling in resources from.
Yes, sir. Plus we paid Shreveport Green an additional $22,000 to help with that effort. And
but that was the effort with that, plus all the ones at the schools too, right?
Yes, sir. And we spent $77,000 on gardening last year.
Right. So what we're talking about is trending that back, not including the schools, because actually the schools can do their own.
Yes, sir. They have 11 different school sites that they have gardening programs at.
Right. And that should fall under the school system.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So what we're talking about is selective neighborhoods that we've chosen to put these community gardens in. And that number should be low, like maybe 6 to 8 community gardens.
Yeah, now Commissioner Johnson, now be mindful, we have community gardens all over the place because a lot of the property that flood mitigation properties, we allow people to plant gardens on those properties, but they are community driven and community taken care of. So we get them all over the place. But for the Caddo Parish Commission, i.e. garden program, where we go into the community, I think that should be limited to passing knowledge and getting a community group to actually do the work.
Okay, well, I think that they might need some assistance because
yes, so we can assist, but it has to be sustainable.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. That if we get somebody that can go in on a quarterly basis to help till the ground, then the community will do the garden in between that time. So you're talking basically 3 to 4 times a year going in and tilling, as opposed to every day somebody going out there and doing something from the parish. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the major overhaul of tilling the ground, getting it ready for the next garden.
Okay.
Or somebody coming in. Might not be a staff person. So it could be contracted out. But at least doing that to help them to do the community garden. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. We'll look at that.
Right. So great conversation about the kind of sporadic maintenance that the garden needs that we could help with. It's also occurred to me that having somebody on the parish staff who has as part of their job description to be a community garden liaison to help stimulate community interest and help organize events where people go and garden and learn would be something that we could consider. And I know that Commissioners Hopkins and Chavez looked like they wanted to speak. So Commissioner Chavez, I think I saw you first.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to elaborate on the community garden, how we're picking the neighborhoods that we're planting the gardens in. I know Commissioner Johnson said we identified like 8 different neighborhoods. Have we identified if those neighborhoods would like those gardens in those locations? I would rather us not just arbitrarily pick 8 neighborhoods. I would like to get the community involvement, basically like a letter of intent before we even go in there and invest the parish resources, that we've accumulated enough interest of participation within that specific neighborhood to identify this is the neighborhood watch captain, so to speak, that's going to be responsible for that, so that whoever the parish liaison is has a point of contact that we can reach out to see, are there things that you guys need? Have you created a schedule to say this street or these people or these neighbors are going to be the ones tending this garden this week, this day, so that there's a little plan of action? Because right now, if we just invest parish dollars into a garden, that sounds great. It really does. But at the end of the day, I'm with the people that if there are no laborers, then it's pointless and it is a waste of money and nobody's utilizing the vegetation that's grown there. So basically my point of saying all that is, I think before we create a garden in a neighborhood, we need to have enough neighborhood participation preset on some type of documentations or not agreements that contract them to do it, but at least to show the interest. That's all, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Great point, Commissioner Chavez. Commissioner Hopkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Hopkins.
Thanks, sir. I just wanted to make sure that y'all had at least explored the extension, LSU Extension Center for maybe help, and the Master Gardener Program. You know, they are required to become a Master Gardener. They're required to have so many volunteer hours. So that might be a way to get some help there. And I just wanted to bring those 2 items up. That's all I have.
Good ideas.
This is Donna, Commissioner Donna Frazier.
Yes.
I have some concerns about the adjudicated property because I did not realize that we were doing gardens on adjudicated property. And I'm wondering where I can get a list of properties that the parish is using those resources on to make sure, number one, it's actually parish owned. Just because it's adjudicated to the parish does not mean that it's parish owned. And there are going to be some legal precautions that we need to make sure that we've taken to have other persons to come on the property and garden. So if I could get a list of those to make sure that we've done all the legal work that's necessary before we have gardens on those, I'd appreciate that. And so I don't know, Dr. Wilson or Patrick, you have a list or who has a list, but I need to get a list of those. And Commissioner Johnson, I think you said that was at LaGuardia. And what is the cross street?
Martin Luther King Jr. Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So my understanding of the MLK plot that by Lagarde is that it was a flood abatement property purchased with funds from FEMA. Is that correct?
We got to check. I mean, flood mitigation property?
Yes, flood mitigation property.
No, we'll have to check. You can use flood mitigation property to plant gardens because you can't use it for anything else. And we got some in Dixie Garden. We let people use it.
You can't have structures with walls on them.
Right. You can't have any structures on it at all.
So I'm pretty sure I heard that. So it may be something that's owned in a more outright way by the parish than it would have been if it was near.
Well, we'll find out, and we'll get Attorney Frazier on that.
You'll find out. Great. Okay. Well, so we may have come sort of to a preliminary stopping point for talking about gardens. I would just like to say a couple things before we conclude it. As everybody knows, I'm very interested in food production here. I'm extremely interested in reducing our food insecurity, which is a crisis throughout our city. One of the things that people often say when you try to get them to change a habit and do something that is new is, well, it interferes with the thing that we're doing already. And so one of the thoughts that I and several other commissioners have is that some of the priorities that we have had in the past for the way that we take care of our land, for instance, mowing, is not as important as doing some things to reduce food insecurity, which is starvation in our communities. It also leads to enormous health problems, which outweigh pretty much any other benefits that we get from our other forms of land management. So it does seem to me to be a genuine priority that we should evaluate to make sure that we are doing something to prioritize gardening over what our normal routine has been, because the normal routine has led us to a situation in which the MLK area is a food desert, and that's not okay in a parish that's as nice a place to live as this one. And the second thing I'd like to say, because I know that it's hard to do new, I personally think it would be better to focus on this one particular garden for a while before expanding and making new gardens in new places, to see if we can get together a protocol for establishing the right kind of contacts with the community to get them engaged, and to figure out what the real costs of installing a garden should be. The numbers that it seems folks have spent on gardens in the past, to me, seem kind of high. And I think that there are probably strategies that we could use to bring those numbers down. And also, they would include getting more people involved. I would also be interested, and I don't know if it's legal or how we would go about doing it. I would also be interested in having the parish fund some kind of grant or camp program in which kids get a small, like juveniles, maybe 12 to 18, get a small hourly wage, like $5 an hour for working in the garden. That's worked in other communities to generate interest and give people a little honest pocket money. And it's something that could work here too. Does anybody else have any comments before I move on? Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I just think that, you hit a key point, and this coronavirus has shown that, you do have some deprived areas, and some people are at higher risk because of the food that they eat and the lifestyle that they have. And these community gardens offer an alternative to that. I mean, if we sit back and say, well, what can we do? What can we do? And then this is an opportunity for something that we can do. And now here go all these obstacles that are in the play. Well, we can't do that because of this. We can't do that because of that. We don't have the resources because of that. I mean, there are ways that we can get it done. Community involvement is the first thing we got to get done. And you can't bring in outside people and expect them to get community involvement to get done. It just won't happen. Not in the area that I serve as the commissioner. You got to get me involved. You got to get the organizations that are out there involved in order for that to work. And if you go into any other community, it's going to be the same way. You just can't bring in outsiders and say, hey, we want to do this garden. They're going to think it's something up with it. So you got to build a trust. Once you build a trust, they will then take the responsibility of what they need to take on the responsibility of and do that. The MLK area is so unique because a lot of them come from the rural farm area. So the buy-in on that, it's not going to be that hard. They just have to be knowledgeable of what's going on and what they can do and what they cannot do, and what kind of help they might have down the road for as changing the garden over for different seasons. Because the people that are there, a lot of them are getting older and older, and so they can't go out there and do all that hard work. But if you got the machine that can go and till the ground up, they can do the rest. So that's what I want to try to get over, and not to say that we come up with all these excuses of why we can't do it. You say we support it, but then we got all these limitations of why we can't do it. And we always can come to some kind of compromise to say we can do it this way and with the least amount of money, but we got all this community buy-in. And that's the only thing that I'm saying is that if we want to say we want to do something, we want to eliminate food deserts, this is a way to eliminate a food desert. You know, you talk about financial deserts as well. Well, we're not talking about building banks. We're not talking about getting into a partnership with a credit union or anything. We're talking about planting some fruits and vegetables so that people can eat. And it doesn't cost them nothing. Now, when you talk about the property that's up there by David Raines and MLK, I was totally against that because they was going to charge the people to actually eat the fruit and the vegetables that were planted there. Totally against it. When you can have the same opportunity down the road where it's free, you know? And so we just have to, I mean, as far as like, we got parks, we maintain our parks, we cut them, we don't cut them every week. Don't nobody go out there and cut them parks every week. Don't nobody go out there and look at the equipment every week. But they're done on a frequent routine basis. And that's the same thing I'm saying here. Just like the roads, the walking trail. I mean, we got a walking and bicycle trail down North Lakeshore Drive. That grass we cut maybe 2-3 times a year, unless it, you know, gets up high and I call Public Works and say, hey, we need to do something about this. But for the most part, that's what happens. It's a walking trail, bicycle trail. It maintains itself pretty much until the grass starts taking over the trail. And then they come out and kill the grass or cut the grass. So, I mean, we just got to make sure that we can be acceptable and flexible to say, okay, this is something that commissioners want to do, as opposed to this is what the program has been done year in and year out. Let's have a little flexibility of what, you know, we would like to see as far as the citizens, because they're our boss and they said, well, you know, we want to see something totally different. And that's what I'm trying to propose. And that's what I was doing last year with the community garden deal is, okay, showing them how, because in District 2, there is no park. There is no park at all in District 2. The only park that was in District 2 was closed a long time ago, and that property has been sold. So District 2 has no park. So a community garden could substitute as a park, in my opinion.
Sure. Well, so
I'm gonna work it now. I'm gonna look at all angles.
To bring the conversation sort of around, Commissioner Johnson, anytime you want to go plant in that garden with me, you and I can go do it. I promise I won't trip and fall and bring a tort suit against the parish. Let's see. So I think that's everything on our agenda. If everybody has given all the comments that they want, I will to adjourn. Is that appropriate? Is that what we do now? Okay, so I got a first motion, I think, from Commissioner Chavez and a second from Commissioner Lazarus. And so with that, yes, Commissioner Epperson.
Oh, I just want to make a comment. Good meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's an old pro who said so. So I appreciate that. And all right. Well, thanks very much, everyone. Michelle, is it appropriate for us to be finished now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one.
Hey, LBJ.